Alrighty, I just left off in the other video right here about the equality of opportunity and what that means, and really what that means in American society. Okay, so moving on here, think about actually real quick again, when you think about the equality of opportunity, think about the American dream, and we all have that, the white picket fence, the 2.5 children, and we're all going to go to college and make a lot of money. And I guess everybody's dream depends upon where you live, but we have that equality of opportunity. Don't think of its equality as, again, racial equality. I mean, because think about the civil rights movement, the Civil War, everything we've had to go through. But anyway, moving on. The next thing that we talked about in class, and these three parts here, we kind of went over real fast, so I'm going to put a little more detail into them here, and I'm hoping this can help you out. We have fundamental democratic processes, and I put here things that make democracy work. The first thing is we have free and fair elections. Have we always had free and fair elections in our society? No, we had the poll taxes, and we had different things that minorities had to pay in order to vote. And you can always argue we've not always had fair elections, but we do have them now. We do have free elections now. And so when you think about not always having the free elections, think about in 1964 the 24th Amendment, and that'll do away with the poll tax. And also think about when you have free and fair elections with, again, the competing political parties. This is important for democracy. You must have this in order for a democracy to work. Otherwise, it's not a democracy. Alrighty, the next one's majority rule with minority rights. And like we talked about in class, don't think of, when you hear the word minority, we're not talking about an ethnic or racial minority. It's just the majority rule. Those are the ones that are deciding the policy. And when we look at minority rights, you look at it's a group of people. It's not based upon race. And so the majority rule, the majority, will decide public policy, and various groups of people are the minorities out there. It depends upon what you believe, your religion. It can be all different kind of things that make up those various groups right there. The next one is we have the freedom of expression, and that's the First Amendment. And we talked about that and the freedom of expression. Again, think about this: how do you express yourself in everyday society? That could be completely different, for a lot of different people. Very important for us. Very important in our society. And the next one I have here is right to assemble and protest. Think about Occupy Wall Street. You have that right to assemble and protest things you do not agree with, things you do not like in our government. You can protest, bring attention to it. And so Occupy Wall Street was very successful in that regards. Moving on to the next part here, and that's fundamental democratic structures. And again, the two in bold are federalism and checks and balances. We'll start with federalism. Think of state power versus national power. State rights versus federal rights. Medicinal marijuana. That's a state right. It's not a federal right. The federal laws have different things about medicinal or marijuana, and the state rights have decided certain things. This is the battle that's going on now. Remember, we talked about all those shops that are getting closed down because federal law trumps state law. And so that's federalism. I put on here state versus national powers, state rights versus national powers, separation of powers. Again, this is just so that one branch of government is not too big. And so you have judicial review as an example, the veto by the president, and then you got Congress can override a veto. Those are just three examples of separation of powers. And then you have, actually I apologize, the separation of powers, we know, the executive, legislative, judicial is what I want you to focus on. I'm thinking of the checks and balances is the veto, is the judicial review, and then the Congress overriding the presidential vetoes. That's the checks and balances, the separation of powers, again, judicial, executive, legislative. And so the last one is constitutionalism. Again, like we talked about in class, our government is backed by the Constitution. And this protects the rights of individuals, protects the rights of minorities. Again, don't think minorities of racial, think minorities of groups of people. And what really protects that's the Bill of Rights. Then we looked at the challenges of democracy: increased technological expertise. Not everybody has gets all the information that's out there. Limited participation in government, poor voter turnout, escalating campaign costs, which really backs the theory that only the elite can be running for office and make policy. And diverse political interests, diverse populations lead to weak political coalitions because there's so many people out there competing.